Hi there. I think things are looking good. We have a lot to be happy about. First of all, we've learned a lot about lockdowns. It's never going to happen again, folks. Never going to happen again. Now, for sure, as long as Trump is our president, it's never going to happen. This is what he said on Thursday. There was a question to President Trump. Are you concerned about a potential second wave? President Trump said, people say that's a very distinct possibility. It's standard. We're going to have to put out the fires. We're not going to close the country. Whether it's an ember or a flame, we are going to put it out, but we're not closing our country. So he's made his position clear on that. However, it's not just President Trump. There are more and more news reports, studies coming out, and the data show that lockdowns don't work. And those that are going slow on reopening, they are feeling the heat. I'm having so much fun with this. All our protests, it's working. It's working here in California. So, one of the things that I've been thinking about is how did this get started? I mean, seriously, what's going on here? You know, if you look back into the past, there are certain ideas that get caught up in certain academic communities. For example, in the foreign policy community and in the public political. A long time ago, there was the domino theory of communism, that if it was like communism spread like dominoes. So you've got to, you hit the domino and all these countries go to communism. And that just got kind of locked into the way we thought about it. So when you had North Vietnam go communism, we had to fight that because they would knock over South Vietnam. So we had the whole Vietnam War based on that idea. And it's an idea, it was like communism was like a virus and these countries were going to catch it. Well, in truth, capitalism is more of a virus because it works. That's more catching. Communism doesn't work. However, there was this fear. So how did we get out of the Vietnam War? Think about that. It was protests. It was disillusionment of the people here in the US. We used to have a draft where young men would be forced to go and die. I mean, think about that. When we think about possibly forced vaccinations today and how much we dislike that idea, people were forced to go and die in a war that they didn't support. But what happened? We changed it. See, I'm very much of the view that real change comes from the bottom up. So even though we have a lot of stuff going on in our country now, I actually think this is the best time. I mean, things were really bad before, but the things that we were able to fix in our country were changes that came from the bottom up, not top down. That does not work. Doesn't work. Even women's rights, that came from the bottom up. I was a part of that. We changed it. We demanded it. It wasn't like just getting governments to make laws. They responded to the demand of the populace. Certainly civil rights, that was bottom up. Got changed because people demanded change. We don't have a draft anymore. Why? People demanded that. So this whole lockdown idea, kind of like the domino theory of communism, how did that get started? I came across a really good article on this. And it basically started in 2006. The 2006 origins of the lockdown idea. And it's really bizarre. I don't want to necessarily read all of it to you, but it was basically some computer modelers. But this was the first time they really talked about social distancing. And it wasn't even any experts involved. And the whole idea of closing down schools came from a high school daughter of one of the authors, and she's 14. So she had a school project where she looked at what happened when kids went to school and how they spread things. So a lot of people fought against this, but somehow it got more and more accepted in the pandemic planning community that this would happen. I mean, if you look at some of Bill Gates, can't stand to listen to that guy now, but if you look at some of his TED Talks, videos, he talks about a worldwide pandemic of maybe 30 million dead or 10 million dead, I've heard. Do you realize with this worldwide pandemic, it's kind of redundant because pandemic does mean worldwide, but do you realize that we have had only 1/3 people die of this virus worldwide? That's a low number in a world of 7.8 billion people. That's a very low number. So, but they had plans for this bigger pandemic and all these exercises that were done. And I'm sorry to say, this happened kind of under George Bush. I wasn't a Democrat then, but some of these earlier Republicans, really, as I look back, these Republicans were bad. They did a lot of things that I, as a conservative now, a Republican, would not support. And it even goes back to Nixon. But the only really good one was Reagan, frankly. But that's a whole nother issue. So the Bush administration ultimately sided with the proponents of social distancing and shutdowns. Their policy would become the basis for government planning and would be used extensively in simulations used to prepare for the pandemic. Now let's not forget Gerald Ford, who he decided in March of 1976 there was an outbreak of swine flu. Really just one guy died at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and this was after a 5-mile march. But anyway, basically about 45 million of 200 million Americans were vaccinated. And a number of people had health problems from that. So this idea of a lockdown and all the steps that were taken has been kind of floating around. But now we've done it. And that's why it was done worldwide. But we've done it, and it's been a big, big mistake. A big mistake. Let that sink in, folks. A big mistake. It's never going to happen again. First of all, we won't allow it to happen again. But it won't happen again. More and more data is coming out. And of course, all the problems with the global economy is huge. So we really, it was almost like this had to happen for us to realize this. And it's really incredible to me. I mean, this whole idea of some scientific, technical elite deciding these things for us, not a good idea. They're not to be trusted. And when I say they're not to be trusted, what do I mean by that? Be very, very skeptical. Let me give you an example. I mean, I really found this out when I started looking into the whole climate alarmism. And I encourage you, if you have not listened to it, that you click on my name, go down my list of videos, and find the one where I did climate alarmism made me walk away. I took great care with that one. I basically read my notes. But it was kind of my disillusionment with the scientific community and on this issue and why. So for me, that was my red pill. Now, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, when I say red pill, the red pill is like the Matrix. You take the red pill, you open your eyes and you see reality. And Elon Musk has been talking about that, taking the red pill. Other people have been talking about it. It's like your wake up. And everybody has their own wake up. That's why we have this walk away movement. But I was kind of fascinated. I shouldn't say fascinated. But there was a study that just recently came out that basically said, no evidence of benefit for chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine in COVID-19 patients, study finds. Well, I was immediately suspicious of that. Because what I've noticed is the medical establishment, these groups, are dissing hydroxychloroquine as a treatment. Now, one of the things you should be aware of is when they say there's an organization, like, I don't know, nurses, I'm making something up, Nurses Organization of the U.S. Remember who runs these organizations. It is not the members. This came out during the whole climate change thing when the American Physical, it's like the physics group, they came out with this very strong statement about climate change being a problem or global warming. And I was very familiar with a lot of physicists who strongly disputed this and did everything they could. Some resigned from the organization, but it's not like they poll the members and ask them, okay? So when I heard that some nurses organization disputed that frontline workers were often taking hydroxychloroquine, I thought, no, that's a political organization. And the people who get on these political organizations tend to be political activists, which by definition generally means, and it almost always means, they're on the left. They're on the left. Because the rest of the people, they're just doing their work. So always be suspicious when you hear a group. They're promoting an agenda. It is not the members. They don't poll all the doctors. So when I saw this study, I thought, okay, and I've done this before with the whole climate change thing. I looked into it. First of all, it was published in The Lancet. Now, The Lancet is basically a British medical journal. It's one of the top ones in the world. By the way, it has editorial offices in London, New York, and guess where else? Beijing. But they actually put out an editorial, a British, supposedly, about Americans must put a president in the White House come January 2021 who will understand that public health should not be guided by partisan politics. You're talking against Trump. The COVID-19 this was just recently, this week. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to worsen in the USA. Oh, it's so bad here. States that were initially the hardest hit, such as New York and New Jersey, have decelerated the rate of infections and death after the implementation of 2 months of lockdowns. Because, of course, people, that's what made it better. Because of the lockdowns. See the message that they're promoting? This is the Lancet. And then they talk about the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, which we know has really become very political. You know, they study gun violence, things like that. A whole lot of left issues that have nothing to do with their original purpose. So we've got to clean up the CDC. But they're saying, but only, this is a Lancet saying what the CDC and others have to do, only a steadfast reliance on basic public health principles like test, trace, and isolate will see this emergency brought to an end. And this requires an effective national public health agency. Yeah, a little totalitarian thing to test, trace, and isolate. Think about that. The CDC needs a director who can provide leadership without the threat of being silenced and who has the technical capacity to lead today's complicated effort. Seriously? You want the CDC, an unelected bureaucracy with a very leftist agenda, to run our life? The Trump administration's further erosion of the CDC will harm global cooperation in science and public health, as it is trying to do by defunding who? You notice nothing about China here and what China did. Nothing. So that's the Lancet. So just as I saw when I used to subscribe to Science Magazine and Nature Magazine, which are the two top science publications, when they would put out editorials saying, we got to do something about global warming and climate change. It's very important. So do you think that any research that comes out that contradicts that would ever get published? And, you know, if you're a researcher, it's a big deal to get into one of these magazines. So as I looked into this study, then I looked at the two main authors. They don't do lung diseases, respiratory diseases. Both of them are heart doctors. They're in cardiovascular medicine. And so they were talking about there's some heart complications. Well, who are their patients? People with heart problems. We know there's some heart arrhythmias, but, and then they're mixing up, they're not, well, I didn't read the whole article. I just read a kind of a brief summary of it. But that's not the point. The point is this becomes the headline. No evidence of benefit for chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine in COVID-19 patients. Study finds. So when you see things like that come out, there's an agenda being driven. Never forget that. Always be suspicious. Here's another thing. Projection is definitely a thing. If I've learned anything else from studying psychology, psychotherapy, you cannot, what do I mean by projection? It's helpful for yourself too. If you impugn motivations to other people, you literally cannot do it. Seriously, you literally cannot do it unless you have something of that in yourself as well. So if you're thinking, oh, that person's doing this or that person's doing that, first of all, it tells you a lot about yourself. But it also tells you about other people. I like Tucker Carlson. He understands projection. He points that out all the time. So I was a little bit shocked when I don't watch him on CNN, but I saw a clip of him making fun of him on something else. But Chris Cuomo of CNN, the brother of Andrew Cuomo, he said he's probably lying talking about President Trump, that he's taking the hydroxychloroquine. And I thought, where did that come from? Literally, where did that come from? I wouldn't even have thought of that. So what does that tell me about Chris Cuomo? He lies about stuff like that. Or he thinks about lying about stuff like that. It was such a bizarre thing to say. And by the way, his brother, the governor of New York, was trying to get a bunch of hydroxychloroquine for the hospital patients. So here's another thing I've noticed. If you look at what the left is saying about what they don't like about President Trump's response, like in the Los Angeles magazine, oh my God, this is a terrible magazine, but it came for free in the mail. So look at that, the hero inside the bunker with Eric Garcetti, the mayor's epic battle to save us from the plague. I'm like, oh my God. But when I read it, it was actually kind of interesting, because here's what the writer said. The near total abdication by the White House in forming a coherent policy resulted in a scattershot state-by-state response. Do they even understand that this is the United States of America? Think about that. A scattershot? Like, what they want is like a dictatorship at the top. A federal government to decide for everyone. I mean, this extends into a lot of things. The left doesn't believe in states, doesn't really understand our system of government, our federalist system. I mean, that even extends to elections. Like, they don't want the Electoral College. They just want a popular vote. They want one same country led by a technological, academic, government elite at the top. Hello. That is the Chinese model. That's why they don't attack China, in my view. They want the Chinese model. No way. Now, let me say why I say that, because that sounds pretty strong. But there's an idea in this educated elite that you can't get Americans to do the right thing, like about climate change or something like that. Because, I don't know, they think we're stupid? I don't, uneducated? I'm not really sure, but the point is, regular people can't make these good decisions. So you need an elite at the top to decide everything. It took me a while to figure this out, but I realized that my late husband felt that way. He never said it, he never articulated it that way, but when we would have discussions, I hadn't really formulated this, but he always was looking to get the government to do something. He'd have some idea, and we want to meet this government official. And I was much more of a bottom-up, because of my background, of a bottom-up person. But I guess I did understand about, or think kind of in that way. Everyone I associated with kind of felt that way, without strictly articulating it. But I think one time he said something to me. I don't remember the exact conversation about, you know, if you like had a group of people like in China where they can make rules for everybody and they could, it's easier to get things done. And I said, but Harold, what if they implemented renewable energy everywhere? And he just looked at me like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. In other words, he was assuming these would be good policies. He never said that again. I mean, it just hadn't occurred to him. He just assumed these would be good policies, but he hadn't connected the dots that they could implement bad policies. But I've been thinking a lot about that mindset because I realized that that is the mindset, that you need to get people to do stuff. Something to think about. But let me just quickly talk about all the great things that have been happening this week, because everybody's backing down. Everybody's realizing this lockdown is a mistake now, and we got to open up. So they're even loosening a bit in Los Angeles. They're feeling the heat. The president is pushing hard about opening up. I mean, he's really pushing hard. We got to have churches. The Department of Justice is saying you can't take away constitutional rights. It's huge. It's wonderful. And I think, and there's a huge, huge number of people who are coming around, who are saying, wow, these petty tyrants with their stupid rules, that's not what we're about. We're not going to put up with that. So think about the head of YouTube. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce her name. It's a Polish name, I guess. Susan Wojcicki. She used to be married to Sergey Brin, but she's the head of YouTube. And she said, we'll take down YouTube videos of anybody who disputes what the World Health Organization says, which of course the World Health Organization is changing their positions a lot, just as Dr. Fauci is, just as all the others. I mean, they're saying different things. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, whatever. But she actually said that. It just sounded so chilling, so Chinese Communist Party. They're going too far. So I just saw in the news today that there's talk, I think it's in the Wall Street Journal, I haven't read the article, but Trump's going to do something about that. He's forming a White House or a commission to look into, I mean, another thing we have to fix is a social media issue. Yes, there's some things we can do, like not use it, but that's just really not practical. They have a lot of freedom, but, you know, we used to have fairness doctrine with the FCC. I mean, there's a lot of things. This is how people communicate. And you just can't shut down views you don't like because you think it's misinformation. So they've just gone too far. They're in their little bubble, and they think they can just say anything, and it's going to happen. So we're going to win on that front. We're never going to shut down again. This will not happen again. It will not happen. We've got to get Republicans in the House so we can stop all this nonsense in the House. We can pass these things. And oh my God, Republicans are learning how to fight back. I don't know if you saw Governor DeSantis in Florida. I mean, they're getting very Trump-like. They're fighting. Look at Rick Grinnell at the acting DNI. They fight. They're fighting now. They realize they can't be on the defensive and going slow. Even in Lindsey Graham is feeling the heat. I mean, I'm mad at him. He's waited so long to do any of these investigations. They're all feeling the heat. Gavin Newsom's feeling the heat. Big time. He's starting to back down. They have to. I even saw I mean, they're losing. They are losing. So I feel tremendously hopeful. And we have to remember, this is a war for our country. I've personally found that very helpful to take that attitude, to remind myself, this is a war. And we are really living in fabulous times. And this whole globalism, letting China get away with all this that it's been getting away with, it's like all of that, if we had not had this pandemic, if we had not had this happen, this might have gone on for a lot longer, but it all got compressed. And it's like, so many people are waking up. So many people. So don't get discouraged. Now, if some of these, please. These masks. I mean, I heard Dana Perino go, oh, we should wear masks and so people feel safe going to work. No, you wear a mask, more people get scared. I am flat out not scared of this virus. I am willing to go to any restaurant. I'm willing to sit in a stadium. I don't ever like going to stadiums, but whatever. I'm ready to be around people. I don't care. I am not worried about this virus. In my own estimation, it's not a problem. It really is not a problem. Do you know there's a lot of people in their 90s who got the virus and they're better now? I mean, it's not that everybody that's old gets this and dies. Some do, but a lot have recovered. From a health point of view, it's not a problem. I am not worried about this at all. So all the opening up that happens, especially if it involves outdoor activity, do it. So if there's stupid little rules that are here, just break the rules, okay? And you can do it slowly. Like I had to wear my mask going into the grocery store. So here's what I would be doing the whole time, okay? Kind of lifting it, pawing with it to get some air. And when they make those circles at the park you see in New York, just kind of be outside the circle. Just kind of keep pushing. If you have to have a mask in certain areas, like let it slip down. Just break the rules. Break it every chance you get. If you don't want to go full bore. But don't do it. Don't do it. And also, these people who think they're virtue signaling by wearing a mask, oh my God. I'm sorry, you're stupidity signaling as far as I'm concerned. So here's what I do. I just look at them like, really? And I took Paul Williamson's advice, one of the listeners to this video sometimes. But he said one of the things he did, and so I've been doing that. So I no longer, like when I'm outside, if people are wearing masks I don't try to move away. So I'm walking down the sidewalk after I did my run. I'm going back to my car. So this couple, and they were probably, I don't know, early 60s or something, but they both had masks on. They moved back to the side. And I said, so you're afraid of me, huh? And I kept going, I think, and the guy said, well, we're old. And I go, I'm 66. It's just like, just laugh at these people. It's sheeple signaling. You mean, to me, I would be embarrassed to wear a mask. I would be flat out embarrassed to wear a mask when I don't have to. You look like an idiot. You do. Sorry, you look like an idiot. And oh boy, just try to say something to me. Don't be defensive. If somebody says something to you, just go, really? You're worried about that? It's like, I'm not worried about it. Fight back. Do not get defensive. Okay? That's the rule. Don't get defensive. We have to take the offense. Politically, we have to take the offense. Don't get defensive in explaining things. I mean, oh my gosh. This is how we win, people. This is how we win. We're going to keep our freedoms. We're not going to submit to this medical tyranny, and it's great. It's really great. And I'm feeling really good. Thanks for your comments. I super enjoy reading them. And it's been fun talking to you. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. And I hope you're getting outside, getting the sunshine, and being with friends and family, and having a great time, as we should. Talk to you next week.